do you have a healthy brainstorming session?
We can help with that.
Hi, and welcome to the Writing Momentum podcast. I'm Gina Maselli. I'm here with my husband, Christopher
Oh,
Maselli.
there was a pause like you forgot.
No, I was trying to figure out whether or not I was going to say Chris or Christopher.
Oh, okay. Well, you can go either way. I'm glad to be here. Well, maybe there's someone else in the room today.
There's somebody else here. One of our favorite people.
Rene Gutteridge. Welcome, Rene. How are you doing today?
I'm doing good. How about you guys?
We're doing great because we're sitting here talking with you about writing, and that always gets us fired
It's
up and
always
charged
fun.
up. I'm like, we just recorded another podcast, and I'm all ready to sit down and start writing, but I can't because now we're having to do this.
I know. If you missed it, last week's podcast was what to do when you're stuck. So definitely check that out if you missed that.
What's this week's podcast?
Today we are talking about how to have healthy brainstorming sessions.
Brainstorming, like trying to figure out what your book is about or your story is about. Is that what-
Well, you could do stories. You could do what to do with a character who's a certain predicament. You can do some kind of conflict. There's also, there's so many elements, so many points in a story that need to be, um,
Well,
explored and figured out.
so often what we do is we run into a problem and we're thinking, okay, what do I want to have happen next? And the first thing that comes to mind, we run with that and just start doing that. And that's okay. But could there be a better way? That's the question. So, Rene, do you always brainstorm your books? Your stories, your
brainstorm my book.
characters? Do you how much brainstorming do you do with every facet of a book? Do you have a notebook, one of those thick notebooks where you start to write down all the stuff about them all? What do you do?
Yeah, just me personally, I spend a lot of time thinking about and writing down things about the character. Normally not their background, normally not their life history. It's more about the essence of them, who they are, and all the other things can be made up. But I've got to explore, what I'm dealing with in the soul and spirit of the person before I set them anywhere and give them a mom and dad and all of that.
I
Sorry,
already want to explore that more, even though that's probably another podcast. But, most people, when they think about writing character histories, they do just that. They say, okay, they're going to have blue eyes, and this is the length of their hair, and this is where they grew up. And they start to get to all those very concrete things, and they don't explore the character's motivations necessarily. So that's interesting. Maybe that's another podcast we do, but that's interesting take you have on that.
Yeah, I'll drive around the city and think about these characters for months,
Really?
Yeah, I
That's
mean, it
just
all
part of your
starts with the
personal
character.
brainstorming.
Yeah, and I get to know them. I don't want to write about them if I don't know them, and I believe that the characters should drive the story, not the story the characters. So I want to make sure that I understand how deeply I need to wound this man before he learns to love them. Right?
We're still talking about the stories, right?
Yes. Not my husband, just my fictional characters. But yeah, but I also enjoy, as I've gotten into the screenwriting world, and which I've been working in, well, for many, many years, but full time for 10 years now, there's a lot more brainstorming required with groups. And you get into what we call the writer's room, and you're taking notes and you're taking other people's ideas, and you're having to grab things, from the air of what people are tossing out, and then figuring out what can work in the actual story. So, I've learned, even though I started off as a novelist, I've learned to appreciate collaborative, creative work and collaborative brainstorming with writer friends. So, yeah.
Walk us through a creative brainstorming session. You and several people that you work with are going to get together. You're going to brainstorm a skit or the story, whatever. How does that session, how does it work? Other than after everyone brings the donuts.
Yes, everybody brings the virtual donuts because we almost always do it
It's almost
on Zoom these days.
yeah.
Although we've done that in person, and it's a lot better in person. If you have a choice, do it in person because what you don't get over Zoom is the energy in the room.
Mm.
If you can do it in person, there's a lot more energy in the room. You can read people's body language. So what I do, as a screenwriter, my job isn't always to come up with the idea. It's often to take the idea that's been decided on and run with that idea. So what I'm watching for in the writer's room is um, certain energy levels popping up when an idea is thrown out. You can hear there's deathly silence,
Mhm.
which I've thrown out many ideas that, there's like cricket. Or, you're watching people go, oh yeah. And the same can be applied when you're brainstorming with friends, see what everybody goes, oh yeah, and at first you might not think it's gonna work. You're like, it's never gonna work. Like, for example, in this last big writing room session I did for this screenplay we're working on, the idea was thrown out to set it in the 1930s. And everybody in the room was like, "Oh my gosh." And I was like, "No. No, 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 no." I mean, internally, I was just like, "I can't, no, this is a bad idea." Turned out to be a great idea. I let myself sit on it for a while. I was thinking more from a work standpoint of how am I gonna
Do all the
fit.
re-
My mind was straight to what would that take cost-wise to create the set for something that's set in a whole 'nother time period.
Yeah. Well, those are the things, yeah, that but the key to working with a creative team is to keep the positive energy going. So, you want to invite ideas, not reject ideas or get defensive. That's a big lesson I've learned over the last 10 years is bringing a negative energy will just kill a writing room just so quick. You want everybody to feel safe throwing out ideas, including yourself. And then you start to, what's the word, parcel it out and figure figure out what you can use, what you could modify. I mean, there's several categories. What can I use? What can I modify? What can I steal from? I don't like that big idea, but I love that little piece in that big idea, and I'm going to take that thing. So just let it all absorb instead of trying to make decisions on the spot about what can and can't be used.
So when you say negative energy, you don't just mean bad ideas. What do you
Right.
mean? Explain what you mean by negative.
Yes. Negative energy can go two ways. It's first of all creating a safe environment for everybody. It's also keeping yourself from being on a defensive posture. For example, I might throw out an idea and nobody catches the idea. Like there's crickets in the room, nothing's happening. And I might feel like I need to re-explain. Oh, they just didn't get it.
Right.
Well, let me say this another way. It's normally not that. It's just that the idea didn't click in the moment. Now, I might still use the idea, but I have to say to myself, why didn't that idea click in the room? You know, why didn't I thought it was a great idea. Why is nobody loving this idea? And I have to really, really pay attention to that because, at the end of the day, everything that we're writing, uh, in whether it's fiction or screenplays is commercial, right? We're writing to sell to readers. So how do we make sure that this is something that the masses will like? Or the other thing I think of is the masses don't like this. How can I change it so they will?
Mhm.
But either way, that first impression of your idea should be paid attention to. If everybody throws up their arms and goes, that, you know, don't be the one that's like, I changed my mind. There was something there that caught everybody's attention. So, but yeah, you just wanted to create a rich, fun environment for brainstorming that's sort of free from, um, I don't know, too much what's the word I'm looking for? Like, um, analysis in the moment,
Mhm.
or critique in the moment.
Yeah, and I think also as you're talking, you're talking about a writer room, but this happens just as we're brainstorming for our books, and it can even be. I mean, a lot of this is fiction because we're saying, what happens with this character, or how can I kill this person off, or whatever it might be. But it can also, even in nonfiction, you can brainstorm with well, what are some reasons for this? Or what is some outcomes for this? Or how can I communicate that? So this does also work for nonfiction. I want to point that out. But also, when we're not just talking about a writer room there, it can be in writers' groups, but it can even be within our own families as writers. I know Chris and I have sometimes opened this up to our teenagers to say, "What about this?" And they will take it in a whole different direction that we didn't think of. It's actually really creative and could be a whole different direction for the story. Would it just passed us right by?
Yeah, they just got a creative energy, and their youth doesn't,
Mhm.
correct?
Their youth does exactly.
I might not first think of maybe some of the more modern, text messaging apps or whatever that they kind of live on, with their friends, or even some of, you know, fun things they might go do with their friends that we wouldn't do that as much. So, but I just want to make sure that, like, as we're talking, people understand that we're not just talking, brainstorming can happen any place. It doesn't just happen among professionals. It can, and
Yeah.
has fun.
It's also helpful when speaking with adult children. The language that you use, you know, you throw out those what if ideas, not you should get health insurance, but what if you didn't have health insurance? But, those positive words like, what if he was a police officer? What if questions, if you're providing feedback more than, oh, you should make him a police officer. That feels very like intrusive to somebody's creative space. So you're using language that allows for more input, more fun. What if he's this? What if he's that? I mean, that's the question we all start off with in our books. What if there was, you know, um, even nonfiction, what if we explored this topic under this umbrella, or whatever. So, but I do find also that now, not so much with myself, I'm allowed to interrupt myself, but um, brainstorming with yourself and brainstorming with people. But when you get a chance to have people's ear, right? Like, people have come around you to help you with the book, whether it's your kids, whether it's your critique group, whether it's just friends. Allow them to speak more than you talk.
Mhm.
Yeah. Give them the room, so to speak. This is explain things as you need to, but if you don't need to, don't. So, like, when I'm brainstorming with friends, I'll throw out the premise of the book, the problem I'm trying to solve, and then um, maybe somebody throws something out. Good idea, but I know it won't work. Instead of saying that doesn't work, I would say, okay, what if he was a police officer, but he's got this issue, he has PTSD or whatever, because that's so you're leading the discussion without controlling the discussion,
Mm.
and just letting everybody have the floor but you. And that's the hardest part because we want to explain our story and get it out there and tell the whole thing. But let's say you only have 60 minutes. If you've spent 40 of it talking, then you may miss an idea that somebody has because there wasn't room for it to grow and blossom and, you know, that kind of thing.
You mentioned before that you may hear an idea from somebody, and maybe in your mind you're thinking, well, that whole idea would work, but I really like this little nugget that they had on there, this little glimmer of gold that I can take that. And if you are interrupting or shutting it down, you may not get to the glimmer. You may not get to the little piece of gold.
So
Yeah.
there's two techniques we've talked about. Reiterate a little bit because they're really powerful techniques, whether you're brainstorming with a group or whether you're brainstorming just with yourself and a piece of paper. And often when I'm plotting out a novel, I like to just have a piece of paper in front of me. And one of those is this what if question. Ask what if this or that could happen. Okay, I know my main character is going to be a photographer. What if they're a photographer for the school paper, right? What if they're a photographer of families? What if when they take a picture, the person disappears, right? You start to make the novel more interesting. And just asking those questions, it doesn't mean you have to go with one of those, but getting all those down on paper kind of gets them out of your mind and lets you see kind of where there might be a golden thread there that you can follow. But the other one that you talked to just a second ago, Rene, was this idea of yes and, right? So someone has an idea or you yourself have an idea, and instead of just shutting it down and saying, no, that won't work, it's yes, and what if we did this too, right? Yes, they're a photographer, and what they're working with the school paper. Yes, and what if they take a picture of their best friend, and you start to go down that route, and you can find some very interesting thoughts that you would have never come about had you not had that kind of openness to just brainstorming the what if and the yes and questions.
Yeah, that's good. The yes and is so important in the creative world.
You
And I think we don't do that enough, really, even in our life too. It's a really nice personality trait to be a yes and person. More fun to be around, right? So yeah, and I was going to mention too, when you're personally brainstorming, and this is going to apply to fiction, but one of the things that you want to push yourself in when it's just you is creating problems.
Mm.
So,
always trying to
as
solve problems, not create them.
right, you're
That
trying to
seems
solve
exhausting.
problems in life, but right, and in fiction, you're trying to create problems. So when you were saying, even you just gave a great example of it. You were, saying, okay, he's a photographer for the school paper. What if he takes a picture and that person disappears? Like you want to create as many problems and headaches for your character as possible. So, Gene and I've talked about this a lot. Most of us are fine, decent people who are not trying to wreak havoc on other people. So we find it hard to wreak havoc on our characters. But that's what you want. So in a brainstorming session, if you say something, you can guide the whole conversation with, I need to make his life harder. Sometimes if you're throwing out too broad of a question, this goes for just yourself and a group. If you're throwing out too broad of a question, you can just go all over the place. So if you'll guide the brainstorming a little bit and say, okay, I've got this character. He's a police officer. He's this. He's a photographer. He's this. And I need to create as many problems for him in his life as possible. Personally, internally, externally. Or you might just start even smaller. Internally, what are his personal issues? Okay, let's move externally. What can I do to make those internal problems worse? And, then everybody sees what a masochist we all are in fiction writing because we're just creating,
And they all
all kinds
become
of issues.
they become entertaining is what they become, right? All those
Yes.
problems start to become this entertainment because we love to watch people try get out of their problems.
Well, and I would even challenge, and I'm working on this myself, having your character shoot wrongly, having them, not just as you've said, Renee, having the problems happen to them, but have them be the one that's causing their own problem. They're choosing wrongly. I mean, kind of thing where all of us have done, where we've watched.
You
I
know,
think we've
I
all
do that all the time.
where we watch it, we watch a TV show and or a movie or something, and we're wanting to scream at the screen because the person is making the wrong decision, and we know that it's the wrong decision, and we just there's that fine balance of not irritating the audience too much with their bad decisions, but there does have to be that point, and I know Renee's challenged me with that, of how can you make it where your person chooses wrongly and yeah, builds that conflict for themselves. Yeah. Like they're their own worst enemy in some things. Not all the time, but we all do that.
Oh,
At least I do, right?
yeah. Well, this has been another great discussion.
Mhm.
Always enjoy having you on, Renee. And if you're looking for a writing community, Renee and Gina and I all have a writing community at writingmomentum.com. You can go there. We have a membership. It's very low cost, very affordable. It's just $25 a month. And in that, you'll receive hundreds of hours of video about training on how to write, how to publish, how to market. But we've also got weekly co-working sessions. We have roundtables where we discuss things like what we're talking about today, but you can discuss it with us and not just listen. We've also got critique sessions where you can submit a page of your manuscript and just some professional feedback, award-winning authors. And it's all good stuff. It's very low cost because we just love building this community, and we'd love to have you there at writingmomentum.com.
Well, thank you so much for joining us today. Thank you, Renee. We love here. It's so cool. Thank you guys. Appreciate you. And we're so thankful for all of the people who are listening or watching. And we hope that you'll check us out again next week, because we do believe strongly, absolutely, that this writing thing is not to be done alone, but that together, Chris.
Hey, we have writing momentum.
That's right.
Bye.